Hello, today I have a fun new friend. I know his family quite well, but I don't know you, Dale. And so, Dale Masten, you have been going through quite a big challenge in your life, health challenge. And we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about some other things. But, Dale, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you live? Maybe about your family and what you do. And then we'll get into the legacy fun stuff.
Okay, so I'm married to my sweet wife, Jill. We've been married for 35 years.
Ooh,
We live here in Cambria, California, on the coast. We moved here in 2005 from Portland, Oregon, where we
mm,
had lived together. We had gotten married in the late 80s and lived for 20 years.
wow.
I think we would have left Portland. We were pretty rooted there. My wife was working as a director of a preschool, and I was working as a designer. And we had a house and etc. But then my mom, developed dementia,
Oh,
so and couldn't live alone anymore. And rather than moving her up to Portland, we moved here to California so we could care for her and be close to all my siblings.
did she live in your house or just nearby?
She lived in our house for the last
Wow.
8 years of our life. It was a massive blessing. Uh,
Mm,
I'm just so thankful for that time that we had with her in the later years of her life. It was stressful. It was very stressful. But many memorable times with her. I actually would spend time with her every day at the local bakery. We would drive
mm.
down every single morning, and we would sing songs along the way. And
Oh,
she had enough cognizance to remember songs. She always knew me in the moment. She wouldn't remember that we had muffins at the bakery when we were leaving, but
yeah.
but she was lucid enough to be very much in the moment, and it was a great pleasure to care for her. And my wife and I tag teamed in caring for my mom. So
Mm.
and
You
so
know,
then after my mom passed away, we we had become rooted here in Cambria, and so we stayed, and we're
uh,
now happy here.
I want to ask you a question about that because not every son would invite their mother going through dementia to live with them and call it a blessing. And I hear you say, there were challenges because of course there were challenges. And and that you tag team and that your wife was supportive. I mean, there could have been all sorts of different scenarios where the wife or the husband resented it, or you never got enough alone time, or you didn't really want to clean up after your mom, or she drove you crazy because she repeated herself so much. Even though I knew her when she was cognitive, I can't remember her name though. What was her name?
Irma,
Irma. Yeah, I
Irma,
knew
yeah,
when we were first married because we were married 35 years as well. And I knew your sister-in-law, then Irma was in our lives as well.
yeah.
So I didn't know her when she started to fail. And 8 years is a long time. So, what do you think would be something that you can encourage someone else who's in that situation or is heading towards that situation? What advice or counsel or something that you could leave with our listeners with that situation?
Well, it's a little hard because to answer that question because there's so many variables
Mm.
dealing with a person who has dementia. My father also had dementia, and he was very much not himself in that state. He was combative, and he'd take
Oh,
a swing at you, and he
yikes.
also wasn't in the moment. It was so much easier with my mom because she was in the moment. And but to answer your question, I mean, it's really helpful if you have a supportive partner,
Hmm.
which, I mean, some people, have no control over that. I just want to give praise to my wife, though, because she was so supportive and just laid down her life for my mom. And I am so grateful for that. And um, I guess, as much as have a place to really vent, I suppose, and give
Mm.
people the opportunity to support you. I mean, even just listening to you share how you're having a difficult time, there's tremendous value in that. That's therapeutic to just be able to vent honestly, saying, I love my mom, but she is driving, the situation's driving me crazy,
Right.
and I'm at my wit's end.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know you can't do anything for me. I mean, they could pray for you if they were a believer, but I just appreciate being able to be honest with you. And there you go.
Well, and I'm guessing you're an extrovert, and the way that we process, the way I process is out loud, which can really scare my husband because he thinks that everything I'm saying is actually going to happen, but I'm just processing. And
Yeah.
there is great relief in
Yeah.
that, emotional relief in the process, and then you'll come right back around and you'll be a little more sane as a result. So praise the Lord for
Yeah.
that. And I know one thing we are going to be talking about today is your passion for community. And that's a big passion for me as well.
Mm.
Tell me a little bit about your spiritual journey. When did you meet the Lord, and what are some of the challenges and bumps along the way?
Okay, so I gave my life to Jesus Christ when I was a kid, in elementary school years. I don't remember the exact date. I was passionate for Christ as a young person. I can remember in sixth grade just spending time alone in my room, reading the Bible and
Wow.
finding verses in the Bible. And I was also passionate about sharing Christ with my friends. I happened to acquire like a big box of tracts from my church. We were part of a Baptist church, and they gave me the whole box, and I passed it out at school.
Wow.
Um, and then actually, I was a pretty emotionally wired kid, a little intense. I had the tendency to obsess over um, things probably a bit too much. And so there was a period I went to Hume Lake Christian camps, and
Oh,
at
yeah.
the camp I was away from my parents and felt a little vulnerable. And I also, so that was kind of a stress on me. But at the same time, I started doubting my salvation,
Mhm.
and I just obsessed over that, and until not just that week at camp, but even coming home. And you know, it was months of just concern. And so to get relief, I sort of just turned my focus away from the Lord
Hmm.
and towards sports and girls and friendships. Uh and I think I was still involved at church, and I would still um I still was following the Lord, but less passionately. And that um, remained until my senior year of high school, when I moved from the East Bay area to San Luis Obispo. And when I moved to San Luis Obispo, it was in between my junior year and senior year of high school.
That's a hard
And
time to move.
what's that?
That's a hard time to move.
It actually wasn't hard for me.
Oh,
It was a massive blessing in my life.
wow.
I had been a skateboarder, and that evolved into surfing. And I was hitching rides to Santa Cruz, and I was very passionate about surfing.
Wow.
And I was totally bummed that I was an inlander, in the East Bay, and I was just looking for ways to get on the coast. My brother lived in San Luis Obispo. I asked my parents if he could be my legal guardian my senior year of high school. They
Wow.
said yes. So I rolled into town. I was 2 weeks into town. I got a job at the surf shop. I couldn't believe that. That totally
Yeah.
blew the circuits. I got involved at Grace Church, which was, and I met other kids who were
Surfers.
passionate. They were passionate for the Lord. I mean, some of
Oh,
the
great.
kids were nominal,
Yeah.
but many were passionate. And that started stirring in me. I had everything I dreamed of, just the surf shop. I kind of had entered my element of just attracting girls, and I was stoked on that. And that was a major preoccupation, and lots going for me. But the longing for that connection with the Lord was stirring again. And
Praise
so
God.
that's when I rededicated my life to Christ. I got very involved at Grace. I taught junior high Sunday school. I led the college hour. There were major influences, both peers and leaders that spoke into my life at that time. It was
Can
a
you
deep lesson.
can you remember one particular leader or the impact they had on you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Corey Melia and his wife Dorothy Melia,
Mm-hmm.
Corey was the youth pastor, and he was an awesome influence, and he's a lifelong friend. He's sorry.
Don't need to apologize.
He's a huge inspiration in my life. Just watching how he's such a deep encourager and in people's lives. And then another person is Ed Bulkley, who was an old man, but so you wouldn't think of, a young college kid being interested in hanging out with an old man, but he was so passionate for the Lord.
Mm.
And he was a straight talker, if you're getting together with him, you're memorizing scripture.
Yeah.
And, he's not going to pull any punches with you. And I was really attracted. And so were a lot of other young people my age. They were just to his passion and to his sober-mindedness. I loved it. So he was a huge influence. And then Leon Maxudian, who was an elder at the church, he was an exceptional teacher. He just had such a commitment to Jesus Christ too. So all of those. But let me, if I could, I'm going to continue with my spiritual journey because I ended up, I was very serious about studying the Bible. And I wasn't academic at the time. All my friends were going to college, and I was just working at the surf shop. School wasn't even on my radar.
Really?
Which is funny because all my friends were in college. Even at the surf shop, my friends were in college. But as I got more, further into just my spiritual growth, after rededicating my life to Christ, I realized I need to be a steward of my life. A better story of my life. So I did start thinking about school. The only subject that I was interested in was the Bible. And so I went off to a Bible college up in Portland, Oregon. And that was a mixed experience. The isolated Christian bubble that I experienced at Multnomah and also just the academic studies creating kind of puffing me up intellectually. And I started developing just pride. So pride had crept into my life, and then a bit of cynicism from the Christian ghetto or Christian tribe that was so isolated. And then also just God and his word becoming an object of study rather than just something that I was internalizing to calibrate me and my relationship with God. Go ahead.
Let me ask you this, because I also went to a Christian school, and it can be become academic. You're trying to get a grade for one thing, and you're taking tests on the word of God, and yet that is just a way to learn too, and so how do you counsel other young people in your life to have the passion of Ed Bulkley, who was in his 80s by the time I met him, I think, and he was a little intimidating to me, but so in love with Jesus compared to what you felt. And it doesn't mean that the people at Multnomah School of the Bible were not in love with Jesus. There were people there.
Oh, totally.
And
totally.
same at my school. And yet when I was in college, that's when I lost my faith. But it had nothing to do with the college. It had to do with what I needed to go through, which was transferring my parents' faith into my own faith. And it took about a year and a half. And I praise God for my school and loved it so much. So So do you think it was just part of your growing up where you had to work through the pride? Because, you can get proud just having girlfriends, and you can have pride just, I'm a teacher of the junior high group. So that's something I think that's a default for human nature. And for God to show you that, did you know that at the time you were struggling with it? Or is it looking back now, you go, wow, I really blew those years? Or maybe
Um,
you didn't blow those years.
uh, I, I, I made some bad choices in those years, so
Okay.
you could classify it under the heading of blowing it. Um, and um, yeah, definitely pride was a part of how I derailed, but also just I had in school, I felt like a lot of the dots um, that didn't connect were being ignored, and it felt dishonest. I'm talking
Oh,
about
okay.
like theological dots,
Hmm.
philosophical dots, just mostly that. Um, and it felt dishonest to me.
Okay.
And so I I would do a lot of outside reading, and that just confirmed my thought that that we were. I felt like that Christian community, to some extent, was protecting their apologetic and
Mm.
not grappling and not even not grappling within themselves or even on a community level with those issues. And that just and so I I had periods in my past where I struggled with doubt. Okay. And those doubts and questions that I had reemerged, and they garnered my attention to a large degree. And
Hmm.
and I actually, upon graduating from Multnomah University, um, I was agnostic,
Wow.
and I was agnostic for probably over a year. I would still read Christian literature and listen to Bible teachers, but I was starting to feed more and more on skeptical literature. And over the decades, that led to a pattern in my life where
Mm.
I would cycle, I would go into a period of skepticism and doubt. I would expose myself to this a lot of skeptical literature. I found great satisfaction in feeling like I could be honest, um, and yet I was cutting myself off from my creator,
Hmm.
and I was also more vulnerable to the temptation of sin, uh, and so I would derail. Okay, I would derail spiritually, but then I would feel like I can't live without God. I long for God, and so I
Mm.
would return to the Lord, and then that would that commitment would remain for a couple of years, and then I'd cycle. Those doubts, those questions would I had kind of stuffed them, and then
Mm.
they would reemerge, and I
Mm.
would I would fall prey to them again, and that has sadly that has been a cycle, a pattern that has plagued me throughout my adult life.
A couple things here, Dale. When you say that you grapple with questions and that they left it unanswered, one thing that helped me during my tough doubting period was I actually told a professor that I was doubting, and it was difficult for me to say that, so much so that you don't want to cry when you're talking to people, especially a professor and a man I respected. And so I would say something like, I have doubts, because it gets caught right there in your
Mhm.
throat. And he just looked up in the sky and he said, and by the way, he's in his 80s now and he has no recollection of telling me this, but it saved my life basically. He said, if God is not big enough for our questions, then he's not a big enough God, is he, Sue? And then he just kept walking. We were walking together after class. And I thought, that is profound. and that we don't have all our questions answered this side of heaven. I'm sure you have grappled with that as well.
Sure.
But the fact is that God can handle our questions. He just doesn't choose to always answer them in our way or our timing. What has been the thing? I love what you said. I can't live without God. See, that's an honest statement from a skeptic that many skeptics will not admit. They are longing for something, but they don't know what it is. And you, having experienced this, and me as well, can say, by the way, there is this thing called a God-shaped vacuum, and you're stuffing it with other things.
Sure.
We can
Yeah.
all do that. So what was the next step in your thing? I know you went through a huge health crisis. You're still in it. Can you talk to us about that?
Well, first, can I just say that I appreciate what you said about that interaction with the professor. And I think in the Christian community, we need to do more of that. We
Mhm.
need to be honest and be able to validate the importance of people's questions
Mhm.
uh, and um, be more transparent in the Christian community. Some Christian communities get this right, of course, and some need to be more intentional about it. And
Mhm.
I'm big on seeing that happen. But to return to your question, which I've forgotten, what was it?
Well, I wanted to we only have a few more minutes, so I wanted to talk about
Oh,
your kidney situation
oh,
because there are a lot of people listening who are in health crises or know if someone is. And I just wanted to know how God is working in your life as well as the whole physical thing.
okay, yes, absolutely. Okay, so I just received a kidney transplant 4 months
Wow.
ago.
How
Yeah,
many? How many?
4 months ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's a deep blessing. I mean, it is a deep blessing because the kidney that I received was from a 21-year-old young man
Oh,
who lost his life. And um, so it's so sobering to receive such a sacred gift. His life was lost, and he has a family who's grieving that loss. And I was the beneficiary of the kidney that he donated. And so
how
it
long were you on a list to receive one?
I was on a list for 10 years.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
which is a long time to be on a list. Yeah, I was on a list with USC, and for some of you're able to get on a list, I believe, when you drop down to 25% kidney function, which I did, and my nephrologist put me immediately on the list. At that time, I was not on dialysis. I was managing my condition with diet, and and but my condition was somewhat manageable. I didn't feel great because my blood was toxic, but I felt okay enough to just not be on dialysis. I was trying to avoid dialysis. And then I became more symptomatic over time. I mean, eventually your blood gets so toxic that you feel like you have the flu all the time or
Mm.
chronic fatigue syndrome. And then also eventually my nephrologist just said, you can't wait any longer. You got to go on dialysis. So I did. And I should mention I went on home dialysis, which is peritoneal dialysis, in contrast to dialysis at a center where you have to plug into a machine for hours, like 3 times a week. I chose at home dialysis, which I just want to mention to people who have to go on dialysis. It was a deep blessing in my life. Also, it was very convenient. After a month of being on it, I felt great,
Hmm.
and my energy returned. And I would just encourage anybody to seriously consider, if they have to go on dialysis, consider peritoneal dialysis.
Do people have a choice?
Yeah, they have a choice.
Oh, okay.
And when you are facing dialysis, there's lots of unanswered questions. There's great resources out there online, but there's still a lot of unanswered questions and fears. I had all that.
Hmm.
But when I went to a seminar and they showed you your options, immediately I'm just like, okay, well, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going home dialysis, and it was great. And
How long ago was that and for how long?
I was on dialysis for 4 years.
Wow.
And I ended dialysis when I got my transplant. Now I want to mention this because this is wild. I'm on the list for 10 years. Okay.
Yeah.
And after 10 years, it doesn't even feel real. Like the thought of getting a transplant, it doesn't feel real. And, so you just think, it's kind of in the periphery of your life, and you kind of fall into this mindset that it's never going to happen. And then out of the blue on a Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m., I get a call.
Wow.
Are you in the country? I am in the country. Are you sick? No, I am not sick. We have a kidney for you. Okay. If you want to take it, we need to have you here in 4 to 6 hours. And
Wow.
right there, your circuits are blowing.
Yes.
You're like, okay, I want it.
Okay, I have a question. I have a question. When
Yeah.
the phone call came, why did you even pick it up? Because normally we don't pick up when we don't know the person's
Actually,
name.
I didn't pick up. It was an unknown number. I
Of
did
course.
not pick up.
Yes.
So, and then my home number rang. I
Oh,
thought, okay, well, this is obviously someone who needs to talk to me.
right.
I didn't recognize the number on our home phone, but I picked it up. And that's when she said what she said. My
And
wife
did
was
you,
at
did you
work
say 46 hours or 4 to 6 hours?
4 to 6 hours.
Oh, but you live up here. It's 4
Yeah,
hours to LA.
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So, and my wife was at work. Okay. So I called her immediately. I said, I want the kidney. Uh, and so I hung up, called my wife. She rushed home. She called her employer, said, I got to get out of here. My husband has a kidney. She rushed home. We did not pack. We hopped in the car and we drove.
wow.
And okay, so, and also, I'm completely, even though it felt unreal until I got the phone call, as soon as I got the phone call and we're driving south, I am completely in the moment. I wasn't nervous. I was just digging it.
Yeah.
I like things that blow your circuits, that, I love just the adventure of it, like,
Mhm.
so we're just driving. Okay. And it was a Sunday afternoon, evening. So we were thankful there was no LA traffic. Okay. And then we arrive at the hospital. You arrive at the hospital and, they're starting to prep you immediately.
Wow.
You get all these nurses are around you prepping you. And, a couple hours later, you're on the surgery table. Okay. And,
Wait, did you have time to call your brother or a prayer team or Corey
as
Amelia?
my wife was driving to
Yeah.
LA, and so I put on Facebook, USC has a kidney for me. We're driving there now. And of course,
Good old Facebook.
it's just ding, 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 ding,
Yeah.
ding, ding, ding,
Yeah.
ding. Everyone's just like stoked for you.
Hmm.
They're just stoked. And then I also, I sent a note to Jill's brother. I sent a note to Bonnie and Wayne, and then all my sibs, my sisters. I have 5 siblings. Um, and it's very exciting.
Yeah.
And also at the hospital, all of that is very exciting too. And I was, when they wheeled me into where the surgery is, I was absorbing it all. I loved it absolutely. Like, all of the surgery tools are just laid out there, just tons on the table. They brought the kidney in while I was still awake. I
Wow.
couldn't see the meat of the kidney, but they have the pan and they bring it in on a table. And there's 2 surgeons, calling out details about my kidney. And I was just absorbing it all. It was great. Okay. And then eventually, you're out. Uh,
Right.
and even when the anesthetist asked me to count backwards, I said, well, I'd rather not, because I just want to absorb all this.
Yeah.
So he counted for me,
Oh, funny.
and then 3 seconds later I'm out.
Yeah, of course.
And then I wake up and I'm surrounded by 5 nurses. They're, when I wake up, they're moving me from the one bed to another, and all 5 are around me. And I wake up, I'm like half drunk on anesthesia, and I just start bawling,
Oh,
and just out of joy,
yeah, of course.
and they all, they're just digging it. And one nurse just grabs my hand, oh, just, you have tears of joy. And it was awesome.
Wow.
I love moments of human connection like that.
Mm.
And it was very much just a beautiful moment. So And so it's odd because in a few hours time, you have a new internal organ in your gut, you
Hmm.
know? So it's a lot to absorb.
Two
There's
things.
lots more,
Oh, I
that
know.
happen after.
Well, I've been following you on well, the prayer thread and then Facebook and what's been going on, and it hasn't been easy. This is might be an awkward question, but were you able to get in touch with the donor's family?
No, they don't, they're very careful about revealing any information about the donor. In fact, the fact that I know that he's a 21-year-old man, that was not supposed to be shared. That
Oh,
slipped, and I picked up on that, but
mhm.
that's not supposed to be revealed. Um, so I have the opportunity to write, just a letter of thanks and gratitude to that
Oh,
family.
good.
They might or might not respond,
Hmm.
and the ball is in their court.
Sure.
That's something they encourage. It's something I will do. I haven't done it up to this point just because I'm actually just there were lots of hiccups post surgery that I was very preoccupied with until like a week ago,
Hmm.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Uh,
Do you feel like God is giving you a new lease on life and that you better make good use of it? I mean, not to put any guilt on you or anything, but it's a new day for you every day, Dale.
yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, that is on
You
your
have
mind.
very good skin color, by the way, and it's
Oh,
because of your new kidney. And plus
yeah.
with the
Yeah, totally. I mean, now after, there were initially my kidney numbers and my labs were exceptional. And all the doctors were just going, you have a great kidney and your numbers are exceptional. But then my numbers uh, took a downward trend.
Mhm.
They didn't know why.
Mm.
And, and so that was, a challenge, a disappointment that I had to process. Eventually, as they were just trying to crack the code on why it was happening. They did an ultrasound, found out that urine was backing up into my kidney because I had a blockage in the ureter that came with the brand new kidney.
Oh,
Okay. And so I had two surgeries to solve that problem. And once that problem was solved, this is only a couple of weeks ago that it was solved.
I can't believe you're
My
talking to me.
numbers, my numbers went up. And my numbers, I mean, the doctor said, well, you have better the creatinine is really the key level that they're looking at, which most of your audience doesn't know what it means, but it's how your kidney is functioning. And he said, you have better creatinine than me. Your creatinine
Wow.
level is better than a lot of 20-year-olds.
Wow.
So that is something to celebrate and to be grateful for. And um, yes, I do feel that well, it's a fact that I will most likely live longer now that I have a kidney.
Mm.
Studies show repeatedly that you live longer if you get a kidney transplant over and above dialysis. I don't want to discourage any of your audience who's on
Mhm.
dialysis, but studies do show that.
And
So
how old are you, Dale?
I'm 60.
Okay. Wow. And
Yeah.
I bet that 10 years from now, they may not have bothered with you, or do they do it at any age?
No, I actually don't know the answer to that question.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And how has this impacted your relationship with God?
Um, okay. So for the first 2 weeks after I received my kidney, I felt like I was very tenderhearted and I was marinating in gratitude. And I I was just filled with gratitude to God. And just I would every few seconds I would just be thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord.
Mhm.
But it's interesting and a little sad
Mhm.
that I think um it's it's human nature to um and we have to be guarded about this to take things for granted if we're not
Yes.
careful.
Right.
We have to be intentional about being grateful and not slip into um, just ingratitude. And um, so it's almost like there's a natural atrophy that takes place if we're not careful.
Mm.
So at the 2 week mark, I noticed a change in my
Wow.
disposition.
Isn't that the weirdest that we're that way? Because you're not the only one. It
Yeah,
is a default with human nature that once we're so elated, and then a couple weeks later, we find something else to either complain about, or we're just not as elated. And not that we have to live on this huge emotional train.
yeah, yeah. There's a
So,
time for everything,
mhm,
and we can't be experiencing an emotional buzz perpetually.
right.
That's not realistic, and God would never want that. But you know, you have a new kidney, but you still have all the same problems and all the same character flaws. And so, you know, and so those emerged for me, you know, reemerged actually at the 2 week mark. And you
Mhm,
know, I noted it, and I just tried to be careful to not slip into that, you know, mindset, and to I really wanted it. You asked me how it affected my relationship with the Lord.
mhm,
It truthfully, not much. I mean, if I'm honest, not much. But I wanted it to. I want, you know, here I was in this life-changing, I had received this life-changing gift. And I also was isolated, you know, for over 2 months. And I had a lot of solitude and reflection. And I really wanted to I was praying that God would do a deeper work of grace in my heart.
what do you
Uh,
mean? What do you
and
mean by that? What
that
do you
could
mean?
that could be, you know, just a more conviction over sin and desire for holiness. It could be a revelation of his love, because I actually think that I um I don't have the proper appreciation for God's love. And so I hungered for a deeper revelation of his love, and I was hoping for that in that time. uh you know, things like that, and none of that came. You know, I had asked friends to pray for that, and I was praying for it myself. And you know, and I should note that a lot of times God doesn't meet us in an epiphany or in a cataclysmic experience. And I think it's unhealthy to, you know, try to manufacture that. I think sometimes God does in a moment, and it's beautiful when he does, but God is very much, um, I think, uh, about honoring the process and just
Mm,
over time discipling us and molding our character through trials, a lot of and suffering. And that's another thing that is an issue in my life. I think I have um, I need a greater theology of suffering, you know, a more accurate theology of suffering and the
mm,
role that it plays in my life,
mm.
or in all our lives. So it's how our character is formed. But
I would be careful how to pray for that, but to pray for that,
yeah, yeah,
because you're going to learn it, but you already have, because these last 4 months have been hard.
yeah. Um, they were a challenge. Yeah, they were a challenge.
Mhm. And as you know, this is a legacy podcast, and by legacy, I don't mean by what money you're going to leave Wayne and Bonnie when you die, but what legacy would you hope you are in the process, because we are people of process. Oh, I want to tell you about our sermon on Sunday. I'll have to send it to you. His last point was, we are constantly in the process of being reshaped and reformed. And this is a pastor of, let's see, he's 50, 55, can't remember. So he's still admitting, which he needs to, because the better pastor is the humble pastor, right?
Totally.
And for us to admit that we're still in process and that we're not victor, like you are victorious now, and you're never going to go back to your character flaws because God gave you a new kidney.
Right.
But as far as your legacy, what are you hoping that you can be known for and that you can actually give to someone right now? It's not something that we do after we die.
Yeah. So I would want to be remembered for taking an interest as a sincere interest in people.
Mm,
Uh, and I do consider that as something that I appreciate about myself, that
mm,
I celebrate about myself, and that I'm so thankful that that's a part of my disposition. That I just have a voracious interest in people,
mhm,
and it could be just someone I meet on a street corner and we have a small chat and I just am blessed by their humanity in that brief conversation. We don't go into anything deep, but I just get to appreciate his or her humanity. Or it can be, just a conversation with someone where we reveal a deeper part of ourselves and it's reciprocal. And I leave that conversation feeling like I have a 3 beer buzz. I'm
mhm,
just like, what a gift. I mean,
mm,
what a gift.
mm.
And that happens to me all the time. And I just because I'm wired for it. I'm just very wired for it. Now, if I could encourage anyone else to pursue that, I mean, there's different temperaments.
True,
And
true.
so not everyone is going to be like I just described. There are introverts who feel exhausted when they're around a lot of people, but they
Yep.
still are part of their creatureliness is that they are a social being
Hmm.
and they need to connect. They have a need to connect with people. And so I would just encourage vulnerability.
Mm,
That I think that intimacy comes with vulnerability. And, of course, you need a safe environment for vulnerability. So we need to provide safe environments where they can let down their guard and
mhm,
be vulnerable. And we need to do that as individuals. And in the Christian community, we need to be careful to do that, to be intentional about that. And we all need to be making an effort to be revealing our true self, a bit
mhm.
of ourself that sometimes it feels like a risk. We need to take that risk.
Well, I
Uh,
find that vulnerability is an invitation to intimacy because the other person will say, "Oh, like Sue, I struggle with this,"
yes.
without us both hanging out our dirty laundry every time we get a chance. There are boundaries, of course, healthy boundaries. But what a gift you are to so many, Dale, because you're willing to celebrate every person that you meet if you have the energy for it. What would you say? How do you actually, I probably could answer it for you now that you've said it, but how would you like to answer the last question, which is how does your life embody the welcoming heart of God?
Yeah, I think I just described. I mean, I think I just answered that question. I do think that God can use I think I mirror God's um love for humanity when I behave when I am sincerely interested in another human being. And I don't want to be eh, I, there's many times where I get it wrong in
Yeah,
relationships,
me
you
too.
know. So and those times I'm not reflecting the heart of God. But when I'm getting it right, I think I'm reflecting the heart of God.
Mm,
And it's a great joy to do that. And I need to add too that it's very much on my heart to be um close and involved with non-Christians. People that I want to be involved with people that I don't share their worldview. They don't share mine. We don't agree politically. I want to be involved with people. I don't want to be um I just limiting myself to interaction with other Christians. I have no interest in that. I don't want to do
I
that.
I love that. And when we were first married, I'm married to an extreme introvert, and so I remember where we were driving out on South Higuera on the way to church, and I said, I have two lists of people that we need to have over, and one list are the non-Christians, and one list are the Christians. And he said, "You don't have to invite the whole world." I mean, he was totally exasperated, the poor man. And then I said, well, then we're going to invite the non-Christians because we're going to see the Christians later. I mean,
Yeah.
if you can only handle that. Now, of course, we've had lots of Christians in our home, but if we don't allow and put time into our schedule for the non-believer, I think we're missing the boat here. I mean, Christ's last words, we need to kind of pay attention to people's last words. And his last words were to go and go into all the world. And if we can't handle our neighbor who's driving us crazy,
Yeah.
we need to have some inner heart work, not just kidney work. And I think God is continuing to use you, Dale. What a blessing it has been to share with you. Do you have any last word?
Uh, well, yes. When I
I thought you might.
when I make friends with people who don't share my worldview, who maybe they're non-Christians, I am not in it with ulterior motives like
Right.
an Amway salesman might be.
They're
I'm
not a
meeting
project.
them,
They're not a project. Right.
yeah, I absolutely not. I am meeting them on the level of humanity.
Mhm.
And I feel comfortable being open about my commitment to Christ, and I am open to hearing their thoughts as well. And that's really important to me. And then lastly, I'll just say it's a blessing to talk to you.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you.
it's been super fun, and I just appreciate you taking an interest in my life.
Oh, it'll be such a blessing to everybody who listens. Thanks, Dale, for your time.
You bet.